Trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, talk about a highly consequential trial for administrations moving forward. I have so many questions for you. But just for starters, who do you think has the upper hand in this one?
Well, this is actually a pretty novel issue, Marky, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And keep in mind, this is happening at the trial level, but there's also an appeal that's working its way through the system. And as Mills said, likely to find its way to the Supreme Court. So both sides are relying on laws that are rarely invoked or used. So it's certainly going to be something to see how this plays out before the judge. Remember, this is a bench trial. So the judge is ultimately going to make a determination. So these strategic legal arguments are really going to carry the day.
And why would a case like this not have jurors, Misty, and have real people and real voters weigh in on how they want to see this work in the future?
So this is really about the application of the law and the legal standards. Keep in mind, only 3 witnesses scheduled to testify. And the testimony is going to be largely about the operations of the National Guard under these circumstances. And the arguments are that on Gavin Newsom, California's side, that they crossed over into civilian law enforcement, and on President Trump and the administration side, that they did not. So that's the issue. And the reason you're seeing this play out as a bench trial is this is going to be about the application of the legal standards and whether or not this type of act is appropriate. Keep in mind, this is in California, but it will certainly be setting a precedent of whether or not that balance between the federal government and the 50 states, 10th Amendment at issue here, how that applies when it comes to the deployment of the National Guard.
And also, is the crux of this case going to be the fine print of Title 10 and whose definition of rebellion and invasion was actually correct or closest to the legal definition in this case?
I think we're really going to be in the weeds here when it comes to those arguments on the law. And to your point, a lot of it is going to come down to these very technical legal arguments regarding the statutory language. But the Trump administration has a threshold issue. They say the law that California is using to bring this case into a civil court actually doesn't even provide that relief, meaning there is no mechanism to have this case before a judge in a civil proceeding. So there's a threshold issue about the appropriateness of that when it comes down to the letter of the law. And then, Marky, you get into the weeds of the language, the operations of the National Guard under the circumstances, and whether or not it goes too far when it comes to those balancing of powers.
And to your point, bench trial, no jury, the judge will be examining all the evidence. It's going to be, to Mills's point, Judge Charles Breyer, who will hear the case, sided with California back on June 12th, ruling that the order of returning the troops to state control, he wanted it to be back in Newsom's hands. Is that indicative of outcome here, that he's going to side with Newsom in this case?
It could be, but keep in mind that the legal standard was different for that particular proceeding because it was looking for emergency relief. So the threshold is that there would be irreparable harm if the troops were allowed to stay under those circumstances. Certainly, the other piece of that is likelihood of success on the merits. So that's what the judge looked at when he initially granted California relief. So could it be? Absolutely. But this is a lot deeper. The arguments are going to go further other than that narrow categories that were looked at in the original application.
And Misty, how long do you expect this to play out?
3 days. We're going to hear from witnesses. It appears today, maybe into tomorrow. And then the legal arguments will begin. And that's the piece where you're really going to hear the application of these laws.
Okay. Well, then we'll be watching every day this week. Misty Marris, thank you so much, as always. See you soon.
Thank you, Marky.